Since I've never once said that Herod, without a choice of his own, did that. But what I have said is that Herod's choice was a choice that Herod made, and hence he's responsible for it. And yet, Acts 4:28, yes, that's the way God created him. He holds us responsible for the choices we make within this realm. Just because this realm is not the only realm there is, just because the realm of time is not the only realm there is, there's an eternal realm, does not vitiate the fact that this is here. And again, if you believe that, Van, then what does verse 28 say? To do whatever thy hand and thy purpose predestined to occur. What is Luke saying in Acts 4:28 when he says, starting at verse 27, for truly in this city they were gathered together against thy holy servant, Jesus, whom thou didst anoint, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel, to do whatever thy hand and thy purpose predestined to occur. What does that mean?
Well, I believe that. I believe that it was predestined, but you're taking the predestination down to the individual level, which I don't believe.
The passage does it. The passage says, no, it doesn't. Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel. And in fact, if you'd like, I will look at the verb here. I'll bet you dollars to donuts. It's plural.
Well, the point that I'm making is that you're going beyond what the passage is saying and saying that Herod, this was Herod's choice, that he had the choice in the matter.
Herod chose to do what he did, but his choice was because of the decree of God.
That's right. God
decreed free choice on his part.
Well, how can it be a free choice?
That's the rub where you encounter God's eternal decree and our existence in time. And again, without a God who exists outside the realm of time, there's no way you can understand that.
Well, you can't understand it anyway. I mean, you can't understand it. The way to understand it, I think, is in our technical age, is through the computer, through the concept of the computer.
I don't know. Computers aren't personal.
Someone writes, yeah, they are, PCs. You take Aldous, who's written the PageMaker program. The program's all written. There's only one thing that can happen. You push the button, only one thing can happen.
Oh, don't give me, there's only one thing that can happen. Everybody we know knows that you can press a button, it can do something that even Aldous didn't think it would do.
But I'm speaking theoretically. They've created it in such a way. I mean, every time I hit the button for PageMaker on my computer, every time that I've done it so far, a certain sequence of events happens. Now, if I were the producer, if I were the creator of that program, how can I reasonably condemn that program for not producing a spreadsheet for me? That's not the way that I programmed it.
And you see what the difference between us here is, man?
I see exactly what the difference is.
You see, you've just gone back to Romans 9:19, and you've just said, no, I don't accept that this predestination goes to the personal level, and yet the very example that brings out the objection of Romans 9:19 is Pharaoh. Personal, an individual who experiences this. Romans 9:18, so then he has mercy on whom he desires, and he hardens whom he desires. You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? And I can simply say to you, your analogy of a computer program doesn't work because it's not personal, and we are personal, and Jesus Christ didn't die for a computer program.
Well, but we are, I don't see the difference between us and a computer program. We were created with only one set of decisions that we can ever make. We have absolutely no capacity to make a decision that God had not predetermined and foreordained for us to make.
In the realm of time, we don't see that. We don't experience that. Oh, yes, it does matter, because that's the basis upon which God judges us, Van. We are not judged upon a basis that is outside of what we can even see. We are judged. My decision, if I made a decision right now to reach across the table here and pop you one, which you're too far away to do it anyway, but if I made that decision, yes, now looking back at it in time, I can certainly see how God did that. But right now, I don't see that. In fact, I even designed a little box that I designed that you can pull a thing out. There's a mirror in there, and it illustrates the difference between a perspective of seeing things in time and a thing of God's perspective. When I said to you, see what the difference between us is, yes, we have differences in regards to disbelief and so on and so forth, and who God is and all the rest of that stuff. But what I'm saying to you, Van, is I honestly believe that Romans chapter 9 says what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't think... I think this.
I'm under its authority.
If it does, if in fact it does say what you're saying, and a lot of people have read it that way and take it that way. A lot haven't. But even if it is, my argument would be that the overwhelming weight of evidence from the Scripture, the passages simply end up without any meaning if you're taking the position that Paul instructing people, Jesus instructing people, people who are not Christians, people who, Jesus isn't talking to Christians, he's talking to Jewish principles. And the instruction that he's giving, the requisites that he's laying down for salvation have to do with how a person lives his life. And it seems absolutely absurd to me to think in terms of an individual being condemned, Jesus preaching to somebody, saying you have to live this kind of life, this is the kind of life you must live, to stand in favor with God and to be a recipient of salvation, when Jesus, when it simply is not possible for that person ever to live that kind of life because God created him with a different capacity, a capacity that was not capable of living that kind of life.
God didn't create him that way. He fell in Adam in that way. And we say, well, God's still responsible for that. Yeah, he's responsible for joining us to Jesus Christ so we can have his righteousness too. God is responsible for that. But don't say that, well, because man is dead in sin, that makes God responsible for not being able to respond.
Of course it makes him responsible because God set up the circumstance. Man has absolutely no option. We have no...
He does freely and he does willfully, because you're saying that if God is under obligation to put inside man righteous and holy desires.
No, I'm not saying that.
But if the will is to do what you're saying that it's to do, that's what you are saying. From my perspective, that's what you're saying. You're saying that God...
If I were on your side, I would... The situation that I would be seeing is that for an individual to have a heart that was susceptible to doing good and to accepting Jesus and God, it has to be put there by God. That's the only place,
my fallen nature.
That's the only place it can come from, because
I'm totally dependent upon God for my regeneration. No two ways about it. But as a rebel, I revel in my rebellion. Yeah. I love my rebellion as a rebel against God.
But the reason you love it is because
that's what I am.
The only origin for that is with God. The only person that is responsible for that is God. God decreed this. He's acting this out, and he caused Adam to fall. And he forced Adam to fall? He caused Adam to fall.
Didn't force Adam to fall.
See, there's a causation. All right. Well, let me read a little